I hope you all had a good lunch and are ready for the final leg of the national dialogue. Our previous panel discussion highlighted how the sector highlights the window of opportunity that we have to rethink our priorities and strategy. We now have a panel that will focus on how successful interfaces between the government, industry, and academia can be designed to fulfill the R&D and technology needs of the sector. The discussion will be conducted by Dr. Vaibhav Chaturvedi, Fellow at the Council, and Mr. Himanshu Dikshit, Research Analyst. May I please request Mr. Dikshit and Dr. Chaturvedi to take their seat on the stage and welcome the panelists.
Now, so I welcome you again. This is going to be the last session of today's event. I hope you liked the discussion so far. The first session in which we, talked about the policy aspects of sustainable cooling in India. The second session where we talked about the manufacturing aspects of sustainable cooling in India. And in Arnabha's words, we come to the third leg of sustainable cooling, which is technology, R&D, and innovation. So this session is going to be about collaborative innovation in sustainable cooling in India. And we are going to talk about how this collaboration between industry and academia, which is what we want, can be best facilitated by the government. How can it be facilitated? What kind of processes we put in place for that facilitation? And when we talk about technology, which will be the result of this innovation, we won't just talk about core technologies, right? The low GWP technologies, natural refrigerant-based technologies, but really R&D and technology infrastructure, the testing labs, the certification facilities, the not-in-kind technologies. What is the landscape of all these in the country? And then we'll also talk about the role of standards in facilitating the rollout of these technologies. Right? So with that, may I please request all the panelists to please come to the stage so that we can begin the discussion. Unlike the last two sessions, this is going to be a very interactive session. After the initial remarks by the panelists, we really, we are banking upon the audience to ask questions, to pick the brains of the panelists, and really offer anything they have, questions, comments, participate in the session as much as you can. So now I'll hand over to Dr. Vaibhav Chaturvedi to please introduce the panelists and also pose a few initial questions.
Great. Thank you, Himanshu. Very good afternoon to all of you. This is a session after lunch, which is, of course, one of the most challenging sessions to be there. Thank you for being there with us in this session also. Also, let me say that this session is not supposed to be a panel discussion. This is a roundtable discussion. Now, this is our best attempt to get a roundtable, in the room. So that we are trying our best. So the whole point is that it is not going to be that the panelists are only going to speak. We will come to you. So just after the first round of interventions by the experts on the dais, it will be great to have many questions and comments from the room itself, because till now we have not really managed to have a discussion from the room, but this is the time we want to have it today. With this, let me first of all welcome all the experts on the dais today and welcome all of you to this roundtable discussion. Let me introduce our experts on the dais very quickly. We welcome Professor R.S. Agrawal, is advisor to the Ozone Cell MOFCC, is also retired professor from IIT Delhi. All of us know him very well. He has guided many of us. So thank you, Professor Agrawal, for joining us today. I welcome Ms. Khushbu Kindo. She's a scientist at the Mechanical Engineering Department of BIS. And she is coordinating and managing various committees at BIS. So thank you, Ms. Kindo, for joining us today. I also welcome Ms. Mary Strand. Thank you for joining us. You were there in the first session as a panelist. Now you are as an expert in this roundtable. So thank you again for joining this session. I welcome Ravi Chandran Purushottam. He is the president at Danfoss Industries Private Limited. And he was also heading Danfoss Motion Controls business in Asia Pacific. So thank you for joining us in this session. I welcome Vasu MS. Mr. Vasu MS is the head of research and development at Voltas Limited. Thank you for joining us today. I welcome Mr. Jitendra Bhamure. He is also advising us at CEEW now, so it is great to be working with you, Mr. Bhamure. Earlier, he was with Blue Star Limited as the Executive Vice President in the R&D and Technology Division. I welcome Mr. V. Manjunath. He's currently working as the Standard Manager at the Underwriters Laboratory. So thank you, Mr. Manjunath, for joining us. Professor Rajan Rawal. Professor Rawal is a professor he's an architect and senior advisor at the Center for Advanced Research in Building Sciences and Energy, and also is a member of various technical core committees of the Bureau of Energy Efficiency, such as the Ministry of Power, Niti Aayog, National Building, Green Rating. So many things Professor Rawal does, and we have engaged with him very closely. So thank you, Professor Rawal, for joining us today. And we also have Tarun Garg from AEEE, and Tarun has been working closely with the Sheetal Alliance, and also we have Ashish Saraswat from TERI, who has also led a lot of work at the Sheetal Alliance. So these are our roundtable participants, but also all of you are there as participants in this session today. As Himanshu said, the larger idea for this session, in the morning we had a very interesting discussion, as all of you would have seen, which was about manufacturing. Manufacturing and how can we achieve manufacturing. And this particular session, we want to talk about research and development and collaboration, innovation ecosystems, and the role of standards. So many very interesting things that are on the anvil in this discussion also. I will request all the experts for their initial remarks, then we'll move to the room, and then we'll come back to all of you. So let me start with Professor Agrawal, you. So Professor Agrawal, you have been into the academia, and you have closely interacted with the industry. Now, in terms of the R&D, collaboration challenge that India has seen, what do you think has been the progress till now, and what has been the role of this collaboration? Ultimately, how can we improve this further? And this is also the overarching question for the next three guests that I will talk about. Essentially, how can we think about collaboration between R&D, for R&D between academia and industry in a much more deeper and sustained way? Professor Agrawal, floor is yours, please.
Thank you. With your permission, just can I take 1 or 2 minutes?
Sure.
What has happened to share with the audience during the implementation of the Montreal Protocol, which actually brought this, the changeover of refrigerants and the sustainability of cooling, all of these aspects. So and then I'll come back to this topic, which is a very important today's discussion. Friends, actually, we started, phasing out of implementation of the Montreal Protocol in the country since 1992, when we became signed the Montreal Protocol. Since then, we are implementing successfully these all phase out targets, and especially from the inception of the implementation, somehow the Indian industry adopted wherever possible, wherever feasible, low GWP alternatives. And this goes back somewhere. I was little involved from IIT Delhi, though I was professor there, but the ministry, sometimes they used to advise. We started the aerosol propellants replacement, and this country adopted hydrocarbon propellants, not the HFC, to avoid these phase-in of HFCs which are called today high GWP. In 2002 itself, the India phased out the halons in the fire extinguishers. So all portable they were converted to the AVC powder, which has a 0 GWP. Similar things happened. Now, coming back to the collaboration is a need, is a not only need, is essential for any technology development and going for manufacturing or serving the markets. So at that time, during that period even, we had a trilateral collaborative projects, Government of India, Government of Germany, Government of Switzerland. And I was fortunate to be part of that process and where the Indian institutes like IIT, Pune, and many others, they participated, they collaborated in the technology development. And during that technology development, one of the major Indian manufacturers converted its, the foaming process in the domestic refrigerators, because at that time domestic refrigerator was the key, not the air conditioners at that time. And so they converted not only the foam, then the refrigerant. And we were like, that was a very successful collaboration, scientific collaboration or technical collaboration between the institute and the industry, where actually even IIT Delhi developed the isobutane compressors and shared that technology with the manufacturer, and they further developed it. So it's a process which is coming up, and I am very proud to say that this country always believed to go for a lower GWP refrigerants wherever possible. Even in the recently, we have the ozone cell Ministry of Environment has, in collaboration with the industry, has implemented the foam manufacturing from the HCFC 141B to low GWP refrigerants. This is the first country which has, in Article 5 countries, that has converted completely, the use of 141B to cyclopentane, ecomate, HFOs, like that. So not a single, you can say the kilogram phased in as the HFC. So this is the merit, the way the Indian industry is moving. And coming to little more about the collaborative research, actually India has a lot of potential. There are thousands of the experts, best experts available in the institutes. If I come to the cooling, maybe about hundreds of them, they are there, directly related to the refrigeration or indirectly related with the heat transfer or heat exchangers and various other processes. So there is a wealth of technical experts available, which are equally, not more, the whatever expertise available outside the country. That is one positive thing which we have, and we must harness that. And for that, actually, the industry has also to move in that direction, because actually if you see, every time, of course, I don't see Dr. Reddy here now, but in the morning he was here, and there are a number of projects which are sponsored by the DST or with the different bodies, but actually we take it, we teachers take it, what we want to do. If the same work is assigned by the industry and we do in a collaborative way, it will be utilized either that time or in little future. But I'll share little bit.
Yes, great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Agrawal. I mean, essentially you are saying there's a great potential, and we need to harness it essentially. Maybe we have not managed to harness it so well, but even though there have been some gains that have been made. I also put this question to all the other colleagues here. We'll come back to you, so please think about, after your comments and recommendations in this discussion, we always take these to the government. If we get some very good concrete suggestions from the discussion. So please think about that. We'll come to you. Now, after this, let me come to Mr. Purushottam. Mr. Purushottam, you are from the industry, and Professor Agrawal has given a view from the academic side of things. Now, in your view, how do you see the potential of this industry-academia collaboration being harnessed in India? What are your thoughts? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. I think before I go to that, one of the fundamental shifts we need, in my view, is that we need an institutional repositioning of Bureau of Energy Efficiency. This has to be moved under the Prime Minister's office if we want to do game-changing things in India. And I think, I'm not saying they're doing a bad job, but I think this institutional repositioning will allow us to cut the bureaucracy across multiple organizations inside the government. That's the fundamental shift we need, because we are talking about game-changing things in India. And therefore, we need this institutional repositioning as a number one thing, actually. Now, coming to where I'm sitting from, we are a leading technology player in the air conditioning and refrigeration industry. And when we came to India 20 years back, we found that firstly, there was nobody teaching refrigeration and air conditioning in a university. And so we had to build centers in different universities and build the talent pipeline for us, actually. That's where we started, actually. The second thing that we looked at is to engage with the students on the research layer, actually. But today, I think we have multiple researches that are going on in multiple universities. And why we do this? We do this because technology, when you want to bring it into any country, it needs to be adapted to the tropical conditions of India. And this is not just the product, it is how you apply the product. When you apply the product, you actually put it either into a chiller, or you put it into a refrigeration system, or you put it into a cold storage, or you put it into a data center. And remember, when you want to put a product in an Indian context, India has tropical conditions, there are different climatic zones, and how the product works to efficiencies and standards we aspire for needs to be articulated in the laboratories. So this is why we engaged in a multi-year research with universities, actually. Of course, this is long term. It's not that overnight we can do it. But over the years, what we have been able to deliver is, we have been able to attract a lot more young people into Danfoss as a company. At the same time, we have been able to build a very strong pipeline of projects. And a couple of them, I know I have you sitting to me on the left, but we worked with the Norwegian University and IIT Madras and came up with a food retail product even 5 years ago, which is CO2 based. But the challenge we have in scaling up in India is, we are thinking ahead of what the whole policies are, actually. So there's a gap between where India should go, and it's not a technology issue, it's more the policy intervention and how do you make this and how do you scale this, actually. The second thing that we have looked at is that how do you use natural refrigerants? As you rightly said, sir, I think India is not the largest emitter. Actually, we have been a lot more conscious of a lot of things than many other countries, actually. So here is an opportunity for us where we can build an ecosystem, we can build a whole industry in a different way when other countries have done it, actually. This is our moment, in my view. And therefore, I think understanding this and working with universities and building long-term research pilots is very important. Having said that, we have ongoing work with the Indian Institute of Science on CO2 as natural refrigerants for chillers. The next big emerging technology is the heat pumps. I know this is not in focus in this platform, but heat pumps are going to be a dramatically important technology for decarbonization. Because if you want to reduce your scope 1, scope 2 emissions of industries that are producing the raw materials for the cooling industry, they first need to be decarbonized, actually. So heat pumps is a massive technology that we need to put a lot of resources, a lot of university engagement, and a lot of pilots on ground to really harness the full potential of both efficiency as well as decarbonization journey, actually. I think the last area where we all need to work closely with the university is on the circularity. I mean, today we are talking about short-term fixing of the challenge we have on the energy side and trying to move away to build the scale. But I believe sustainable cooling can come only if you integrate circularity and decarbonization. So one of the challenges we have had in India is that at least when Danfoss started in India, an air conditioner was seen as a luxury product, actually. That was a very wrong thinking from the government side in the early days, actually. Because they really made the industry look it's expensive, right? So the perception in the consumer also, it is expensive. Even if you make the best of air conditioners today, nobody wants to pay for it, because the life cycle cost is not looked at. We only look at the first time investment. So therefore, this whole perception to whom to produce, who's our customer, actually, that has to change in my view. So we need to produce to the consumers who want to look at sustainable products, actually, be it an Indian consumer or a global consumer, actually. So I think this customer mindset is a very, very important thing, actually. And to me, sustainable cooling is about a social transformation. It's not about technology, it's not about business models, it's about social transformation where all hands to be on the deck if we really want to make a difference to this industry. I'll stop here and come back later maybe. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Purushothaman. And this is very interesting, particularly the first point that you made, which is pretty explosive, I would say, that BE should be under PMO. I don't know what many experts here think about it. This is a very, very interesting suggestion. Let me request our next industry expert, Mr. Vasu, to talk about his take on the collaborative R&D, but also what he thinks about this particular suggestion on BE.
Yeah. So good afternoon, everyone. So first of all, I would like to speak about the innovation, how India is transforming in innovation. So innovation is the coming up with the new things, which is not exist in the market, not existing in the current scenario. Something new is coming in the innovation. That is what we see in the products. The industry is adopting stage. Adopting means already successful innovation which is happened across the world. The industry is adopting the technology and suiting to Indian conditions. That is what industry is doing last, I think, 15 years. Thanks to BE, that is a starting point of the innovation. Earlier, before BE implemented the MAPS, that is the minimum energy efficiency, people doesn't know what is efficiency. Once it starts MAPS, then the people start understanding, and in the industry start thinking how to develop, the next level, next BE table is coming, what to do next, how to optimize the cost. So that is where the challenge comes, and so there is a part of policy interventions. See, when the challenge comes to you, the innovation happens. Just before that, I'm speaking about the innovation. What does that during a pandemic? Earlier days, any vaccine to develop, it took around 15 to 20 years. Recent COVID scenario, where innovation took place within the 2 years. So that is where the challenge comes to the industry reacts. That is number one. Where number two, in the morning session, there is a talk about that how industry collaboration happens. Industry start collaborating in terms of the fast execution, right? When I talk to fast execution with the SMEs or the small manufacturer, of course, industry is collaborating with the small manufacturer to make the already developed technology to implement fast. So that is where the industry is been doing. Now, India is currently at that stage to start exactly the innovation, the new disruptive technology to come in. It is basically the value chain. You need to the industry look at ROI. The return on investment, even in a research stage, any product to develop, how quickly implement it and how quickly you can able to gain that. So industry is looking at adaptation stage now. Now it is going to innovation stage. Now industry is thinking how India's first, how you can make India's first product. So that is where the transition stage. Of course, now the various government policies are coming in, talking about lot about sustainability, lot about efficiency, and already India reached the stage of, for example, coming to room air conditioners, the room air conditioner efficiency, we are at par with the world standards, right? Now we are thinking about what is the next level, So the innovation, again, the challenge come to the industry, there is the innovation required, the global challenge. As mentioned earlier, there is that challenge was took, and there are many Indian companies that participated and developed the technology. Of course, that technology again come to actual real utilization. So the point what I'm trying to say is that industry currently looking at a fast execution of any innovation, and it should be implementable. Then we are at that stage, and now industry is looking at the world-class level. So coming to collaboration, now industry working with who is the partner who can able to bring some knowledge to industry, and industry will share with that knowledge and give the technology fast. So earlier, if I talk about 15 years before, the industry working in a closed innovation model. What is closed innovation model? Within the company, within the R&D department silos, they are working and they make some innovations, something like that. Now, during last 10 years, there are a lot of transition happens where industry collaborate with the MSMEs, the knowledge, who already having some knowledge, and we collaborate and bring the product faster. That is how quickly industry adopts whether it is a refrigerant change or whether it is energy efficiency improvement every 2 years, the table changes. So that is happens. Now it is a time to Indian industry to open for open innovation. When you talk about open innovation, not innovation at a industry level, at a factory level, the innovation should come out. So you have knowledge, I have a knowledge of 30%, somebody has a knowledge of 40% or 50%. So bring together, you can make a faster innovation and faster execution. Now open innovation is the topic already exists in worldwide, but India still it is starting. The open innovation start with the industry level itself now, from the factory level, from the company level to industry level, collaboration is happening. Now started working with the universities, and coming up. Now that also, those innovations also very quick innovations, means faster implemented. The ROI calculation comes to the bit. When it comes to the totally disruptive, it means a lot of money, lot of time it is required, where industry doesn't have that kind of, time and effort and money. That is where the gap. So I request here that government should come in, plug in that gap for a disruptive technology development. There is a need of government support. I just talk about the R&D center, of course Dr. Reddy is not here. Earlier there is an incentive for R&D. If any company does invest in a money in R&D, there is a support from the DST recognized center. They give some kind of benefit to the industry, which has been gone now. I think that should be re-established. There should be focus on R&D. If any company is there, today CSR is a mandatory investment by the company, but why not R&D? Some logic should be built upon, so that the industry must put some money in R&D, number one. Number two, today morning CEEW launched very good site, that open innovation platform where people come and put their innovations. Similarly, I request that universities come to that kind of open platform, put their innovations. Then industry see, oh, this innovation available, then they can adopt it. Rather than, universities looking at industry to come them, rather than if to put open. This platform is available across the world, other countries, they are already there. The universities make a mandate for a BTech student or a master student, they should innovate in a particular segment of product, and they should publish a paper, and they should make in a proof of concept, the mock-up and proof of concept. That kind of culture in academic level happens, and they put up that innovation and make it IP, the intellectual property registered, and put across the open forum, and industry come forward. Because industry is not that level currently, so it should be both win-win kind of things should happen from the industry side, academia side, and government side, so that the innovation can happen faster phase. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Vasu. This is a very interesting practical suggestion that like we have the 2% CSR rule. Can we have something like that for R&D investments also? But also listening to you, I was just thinking that till now traditionally we have been engaging with, let's say, DST on the R&D issue. I think the way you talked about like universities and skill building there, it's also a case for MHRD maybe, because that's where a lot of in skill building happens on research and development. So maybe something with the MHRD has to do in terms of linking to universities in terms of the innovation program itself. It's not just about linking the industry and through the government, through the DST program, but maybe some other route also has to be explored. So thank you for suggesting those. Now, all of these experts have till now talked about within India, the ecosystem within India. Now, let me request Ms. Mary Strand. We know India and Norway have a great collaboration, and they've also been, the Indie project has been just been talked about, an example of kind of cooperation on R&D between Norway and India. But what has been experience on this industry academia collaboration within Norway, but largely speaking, what are the programs that you have thought about to push research and development and collaboration within Norway as well as across different kind of countries? So look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, and thank you so much for that. And I feel that I'm sitting in the perfect spot between the private sector on both sides. This is all part of a very important Norwegian government policy to help support the green transition. And Norway, as many other countries, we see this as a very positive economic opportunity, and we are investing a lot in research and development to help support the green transition, not just for ourselves, but also to reach the global goals. And in that process, cooperation with other countries is very important, and Norway's Panorama strategy, which is set up to help support such cooperations outside Europe, where India is then one of our main cooperation partners. And as part of that strategy, many of the points that have already been raised are emphasized. First of all, that one should cooperate with industry and private sector. Secondly, that the result should be in the public domain. I was very happy to see the same point taken by the private sector, and also where it's natural and possible, to help promote collaborations also on the industry side. And I know this is a different sector, but within the hydrogen sector, India's Reliance and Norway's Greenstat, they have entered into an agreement on a center of excellence for hydrogen. So that is one example of how that could actually look. If we come back to our institutional cooperations, we base them with the institutions that Norway's government uses themselves for their own technical and policy work. And they are very much equal collaborations. And I believed I mentioned before that when we talk about cooling, when we bring the knowledge base that Norway has had in these sectors to India and work with them on together with our Indian partners, we develop our own knowledge base because it has to be adapted to the local context and, as you were mentioning, the very high heat conditions. So this is actually knowledge building that benefits both parties, and I think that is the best way to look at these views. I did want to mention one policy issue that has not been raised earlier today, and that is a very important part for Norway's handling of the sector, is that we have an F-gas tax, which is actually administered by the Norwegian Tax Authority. So that would be similar to using the GST base, and that is partly refunded when you deliver the gas back for recycling. And the system is set up so that it also covers both imports as well as exports, but that is again why you use the tax authority. And it basically makes a very much built-in incentive to find the most efficient technologies popular without government going in and mandating on any detailed level how this should work. I believe you also know that Norway is a great believer in carbon tax. So in general, we do believe in also using these financial incentives in addition to the more direct industry and sector regulation. Thank you.
Great, thank you. You concluded on the issue of carbon tax, which is very, very interesting. Because as you would know, Indian government has just started the process of an emission trading scheme. So the Bureau of Energy Efficiency is managing that process. The white paper is already out, and with the net zero announcement, maybe sometime in the future, India is expected to have a carbon price, and that's what the carbon market is expected to do. And as we know, a carbon tax or a carbon price does spur innovation across technology. So it is known to be one of those instruments. So thank you for sharing that. The other thing that you also talked about on the tax and refund system. I think India has been grappling with this big challenge of end of life of refrigerants, and that's a very big challenge. If, as Shikha said, 40% of our emissions happen during the servicing process because there is no incentive or kind of infrastructure to collect those gases. Maybe so. Thinking about this end of life infrastructure and system and what kind of incentives can be put in place, it's also very, very important and an issue for research. Maybe not technical research, maybe research on business models or those kind of things, but very, very important issues. So thank you for highlighting those. Now, it's a great segue for me to start talking about standards. So we've talked a lot about R&D and collaboration, but standards become kind of an Achilles heel or very important challenge, in this process. And we have got many experts on this, standard issue. I will start with Professor Rawal. So Professor Rawal, you have talked or worked a lot on the global cooling prize, which is about a disruptive, tech innovation. But you've also worked on, this whole issue of standards being created to promote your new technologies and all. So what are your thoughts on both of these issues of, these kind of breakthrough technologies of, game-changing technologies for the future, as well as the role of standards in the whole process? Thank you.
Thanks, Vaibhav. Before I answer that question, I would like to second what Ravi has stated, that we really need to think about Bureau of Energy efficiency, and how do we really increase that by shifting its base, or rather enhancing the existing framework so that it really can deliver what is its objective. I think energy efficiency needs to be managed as in a mission mode, and not just what we are seeing right now. So I support what Ravi has expressed, and hopefully we should be able to take it forward as one of the key point out of this deliberations, even if it is not part of your agenda. On standards, yes, I think the kind of technologies which are emerging and sustainability will come only if we have a multiple solution for multiple problems. And hence, any kind of standards and then later on testing procedures must be technology agnostic. Traditionally, our standards used to be biased towards one or two kind of technologies, and biased only primarily, I would say, looking at cooling capacity, not really the kind of refrigerant you use, not kind of amount of thermal comfort you can achieve. And it was more about technology way or technology fix kind of approach, which needs to change if we really want to see multiple technologies serving the mankind, and hence some kind of paradigm shift required for sure. I think stage is also set because these technologies are emerging, so we know what are we looking at. It's not like a black box that we don't know for what technology are we going to design standards. So we know what are the emerging technologies, and even for market to adopt these, we need to put them on a level playing field.
Great, thank you for that. And very interesting thoughts, but let me come to Ms. Kindo. You represent the Bureau of Indian Standards. So from your perspective, I mean, because you don't just deal with one sector, right? You are talking about standards across many different sectors, many different technologies. So what kind of big challenges as an organization you face, and in terms of ensuring that standards actually allow us to for better research and development, better product development at a much faster pace as we need. What are the challenges and opportunities you see in that space?
Okay, so when we are talking about innovation and new technologies, standard can actually help to overcome the hurdles of commercializing of such innovation and technologies. So actually the standards can play a key role in laying out the rules of the game so that such products can be commercialized and utilized by everyone. The main hurdle that we face during development of standard for such technologies is the availability of data. Because of the technology being new, there's lack of data for which certain R&D is required, and which of course the industry helps and assists BIS in providing, and they do their own R&D. With the help of that, we try to incorporate them in the standard. One thing important is that standards are voluntary in nature, and it is also that once the standard is published, it is always subject to change. So as and when new technologies or new changes happening, it can always be upgraded. So thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, and that's a very interesting kind of point, that standards are always subject to change. So a new technology comes in, you have to keep on this process of enhancing your standards. And the data issue you mentioned, I mean, what is really the way to overcome? I mean, is there any solution to this data issue?
This data issue, my opinion will be that it will be only overcome by more research, either by academia or by government funding such studies, by either by industry itself or by different institutes or laboratories.
Okay, thank you. We'll come to that. So let me come to you, Mr. Manjunath. Now, what is your perspective? And Ms. Kindo has talked about this data as a very important or very big kind of impediment and need for this kind of research to overcome this. What is your perspective in terms of challenges and solutions for this issue?
Actually speaking, standards are the base for innovation, I can say, because the great example that was spoken about just now by Vasu and also my colleague from Danfoss, that BEE's implementation and changing the table really brought the innovation. Every manufacturer looked at bringing the new innovations. Now, I have few points to make when it comes to standards, because standards always has to support a new technology to come so that the end purpose is met. Today, what we are talking about, air conditioner, does not mean to say that it has to have a compressor, it has to have an evaporator, condenser, fan, etc. The end purpose, what we are really looking at is the comfort. Can we look at in what way the comfort is delivered and how do we assess that technology with reference to its benefit to the end user and the sustainability part that we are talking about. See, overall, what really looks at, this is always intriguing me, or I always feel, before all these air conditioners were there, we are still making ice which was available without refrigeration. There were various principles which were used. In the process of modernizing and also bringing the mass production, I think we have come to a particular stage where we think, or we are conditioned saying that air conditioner means it has to have a compressor, it has to have an evaporator. But if the technologies can be brought in which can deliver the same one, the standards have to be such that they are not going to talk about what is there inside. Is it delivering the purpose? So that's going to be the important thing. Now, the point which Khushbu made is particularly on the data. Yes, data is going to be a challenge which has to be substantiated, because just by one particular technology coming in or someone coming out with some technology without any data, we cannot change the standard as such. We need to have enough of data, because standards are the one which provide the level playing field. So what we have seen is that all the manufacturers and the academia who are working on it has to come forward and provide those data, because as we are talking about the collaboration, one of the important thing here, the standards are developed through collaboration only. It is the various stakeholders come together, all the stakeholders, because it's not going to favor one particular stakeholder in the whole community. Whether it is the manufacturer, it's academia, testing organization, research organization, all of them have to come together and agree on to a particular system or a particular specification, not the system, particular specification, so that the standard is well accepted and can be implemented. So this is what I think.
Great, thank you. I think you emphasize that it is about collaboration, not just in research and development, but even the standard development process is a collaborative, or has to be a collaborative process. The other thing you mentioned was very interesting, that ultimately we have to have a site of purpose. Like, the technologies ultimately are a means for maybe thermal comfort. So that site of that end game or purpose is very, very important for us. And then from that perspective, we have to start thinking about what kind of challenges and addressing those challenges. So thank you for highlighting that the end game is what really matters in all this debate. Yeah.
Another point which really is, earlier standards were talking about one particular, they were all vertical standards. There is no more vertical standards that we can look at. We have to look at the horizontal standard, because no one system works independently. The controllers, if we are going to deploy with an air conditioner, so that it delivers the ultimate purpose of energy conservation. So I cannot say the controller is independent and the air conditioner is independent. How do we integrate everything? it becomes an important factor for the standards to look at.
Okay, okay. Thank you for that. Now let me come to you, Mr. Bhamure. You have been at a very senior position in the industry. You have also been a part of TEEP. You are of course now advising CEEW, and so it's great to have you there. Hearing all the other experts on this whole collaborative issue as well as standard issue, what will be your perspective, and how do we really push this agenda of collaborative R&D and creation of standards as a level playing field for innovation? Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I would like to put, let us understand what is happening across the world. The technologies are getting driven by sustainability. We have to understand this. All across the world, it is not only India. And the pace at which it is changing is also very fast. And the end objective is something which has been to be understood well. Now, there are different players in the, right from innovation which happens mostly, say, in academia, till it reaches the end to achieve the sustainability. The end part is the industry, which is either giving the services or giving the products. And I would like to bring in a concept, something called, like it is a supply chain, I would like to bring in a concept of design chain or design chain. And this design chain will start from what is happening in the academia, which is the innovation, and what is happening at the end. And there are different links in it. And these links are, of course, standard is one of the most important link in it. But there are also other links. In the morning we saw MSMEs will have to play a role in it. Manufacturing, innovation in manufacturing technology of those technologies, commercialization of technologies, all have to be put in the link. And for that, to manage this design chain, you require to manage the technologies. And that as a concept, it is a management of a technology should be definitely looked into. Now, coming to a specific question of standards, standards becomes important because if an innovation has happened, why should customer believe that it is right or wrong? Somebody has to say, well, it is safe technology to use. Somebody has to say, yes, it meets the the intent or the claims that are made by the manufacturer. And that, as a third party, standards support that. Now, it is not only the standards that will be there in the chain I'm calling of design, you require laboratories to do that. And if the labs are not there, then why should a customer say? Because to a customer, what is important, he's not really wanting to understand what that innovation. His interest is not. He's interested in what is relevant to me, what is it going to help me. If I say, or if somebody comes and says, no, this is the technology which is going to save you so much of power, how do I believe it? So there has to be a standard for that. There has to be a lab for that. And in this process, also one other important point that comes up is the reliability of the product. I can always see that there are standards that are available for performance checking, the standards that are available for safety, but very few standards are there which ensures the reliability. For example, like if I buy a product, I'm not going to check the performance daily. I believe that it is there. But I'm most concerned about the reliability of the products. So these are various aspects that I can see that become very, very important with respect to managing the technology so that it gets converted into a delivered services or a product to the customer. Now, in these links, each, there are various people who will be, or various entities who will be playing a role. If you start with the institutes, of course, they will do the research. Then there will be something which, how that research can be deployed by the industry or not. If they are to deploy, then is it possible to have a manufacturing technology for that? It is not the product technology, but a manufacturing technology. Then comes the standard, then comes the deployment of supply chain. Then whether that technology has been sufficiently disseminated to multiple players, including the MSMEs, and how they get it. Then it comes, then there should be labs, then the production happens, and then it goes. So this complete, I would say the design chain becomes important for effective delivery. Thank you.
Thank you. Very interesting idea, Mr. Bhamure, of the design chain, that these are not just about this one element or two elements. If we start thinking about this whole chain, and then many elements that are required in this chain is what we probably need to think about, not just one, two elements here and there. Now we've got two of our colleagues from the Sheetal Alliance. Himanshu, please go ahead and ask some interesting questions to our colleagues.
So there's a lot of agreement on the panel on the fact that standards are crucial to technology deployment. And I really like the point that Mr. Ravichandran made about heat pumps, right? Heat pumps are going to be the technology that will really become a breakthrough technology. It will change the market. Our colleagues from the Sheetal Alliance, Tarun and Ashish, they work on these aspects, and particularly Tarun, I'm coming to you, who works on district cooling. And we know that a lot of pilots are being run currently. There are a couple of pilots in India as well and around the world. And so I want to ask you, what is your perspective on the potential of district cooling, and if there are any challenges or opportunities there, if you can talk about them.
Thank you. Is it audible? Okay. Thank you, Himanshu. And before I start, I would like to tell you that in AEEE we are driving two agendas. One is thermal comfort for a billion lives, that is thermal comfort for all, and nutritional food for all. So not food for all, but nutritional food for all. So I'll cover a bit about district cooling, as well as I'll cover a bit about cold chain, and maybe putting things in perspective from standards point of view. So right now we are doing a project with GIZ in which we are looking at implementation of district cooling, but the concept was started in the Sheetal Alliance as not-in-kind technology as one of the recommendations in ICAP. District cooling has been implemented globally, and it is proven, if you look at some of the facts, 30% of India's electricity demand is contributed through cooling, and district cooling could be that technology which can, shave off the peak demand. And globally, it has been proven 40% it can shave off, and 50% of energy consumption can be reduced through district cooling. So, with those benefits in mind, Bureau of Energy Efficiency is kind of looking at the technology implementation, and I would say there are a lot of challenges in its implementation, right from the policy, then to the policy standards, guidelines. So nothing is available right now. If you look at, I think only one pilot which has happened on the concept of district cooling is Gift City in Gandhinagar. So one of the biggest challenge we have found is there is no awareness. There are no guidelines which people can look at. Guidelines for different players who are working in this technology implementation, be it government, be it private people, be it municipality. So this is one of the major issue, and you will find maybe 6 months down the line a document in the form of a guideline that will be released by Bureau of Energy Efficiency, which will go a long way. I think yesterday I was in Pune and we were discussing this with Pune Municipal Corporation, and one of the biggest point the commissioner highlighted is, unless until you have something in the form of a guideline which could be converted into a code, it's not feasible or it's not possible for them to even think about a technology implementation from the bylaws perspective. So this is the one perspective from district cooling point of view. And the second point I want to highlight is from the cold chain perspective. So in 2019, we conducted a workshop for improving energy efficiency in pack houses. Pack houses is the nerve center of entire cold chain from farm to fork. So this is the first point of intervention where food gets sorted, graded, and it's get pre-cooled. So I think all the people who are kind of designing pack houses and operating and using pack houses highlighted the role of standards, and they clearly told us that based on the survey done by us of 20 pack houses, we saw different designs, and there was no focus at all on some of the indicators like when we talk about buildings, we have kilowatt hour per meter square per year. So in pack houses, it could be kilowatt per metric ton or metric ton per tons of refrigeration. So those kind of indicators does not exist as on today. You'll find only one of the studies done by AEEE where this kind of indicator has been developed. So all the stakeholders who were present in that room, and stakeholders comprises of people from NITI Aayog, Bureau of Energy Efficiency, a lot of private people, all of them agreed to have a standard which can look at pack houses and which can at least define some of the basic requirements which if you are planning to construct a pack house, you can look at those standards. So I think this is my view. And
Great. Thank you. Now, you made two unrelated points, one on district cooling and the other on cold chain. With that, let me come to Ashish and hear his views on pretty much everything, standards, technology deployment, and if there is any not-in-kind technology that you feel can change.
So
India's
standards,
market.
I believe Khushbu is there, so she is the right person to speak on the standards. But to the extent I have worked on the standards, Bureau of Indian Standards has a whole bible of standards coming for air conditioning equipment to refrigeration equipments and to different components of these equipments. And these standards are like for air conditioners, it is 1391 part 1, part 2, or be it for refrigerator 1476. Revisions are also taking place in a periodic in a manner. But when it comes to the integration of low GWP refrigerants in line with the Montreal Protocol, it is very important to see whether our standards are aligned with the standards when these equipment would be using these low GWP refrigerants. At this point of time, we have a very acute penetration of low GWP refrigerants in India, if I may precisely say for HFOs, not for R290, which was used by Godrej and was a success also in terms of implementation. But do we have, we need to really revisit our standards in terms of when the pressures and the controls are changing, when the performance of the equipment is changing, integrating this low GWP refrigerants or different refrigerants with the equipment. Do we really need to revisit these standards? The other part is implementing this whole sustainable cooling into the context of India. So let me just give you a very basic line that all of us must have heard, and this is not something new that I am talking. Cooling is a necessity than a luxury. This is a very simple tagline that you must have seen everywhere. But the kind of heat we are experiencing, the kind of extreme heat waves the vulnerable people, the low income people are experiencing, do we really not need to think whether this luxury thing should really transit from the luxury to the compulsory or to the necessity side? Government should think into this area to identify some areas wherein this kind of cooling or wherein sustainable cooling at least can be made as a necessity or can be thought as a necessity. Why? Because bringing that into perspective, making the ground for the sustainable cooling agendas, that will automatically bring the fundings from the multilateral funds or any funds that are created with the help of collaboration from public and private. So that will be the key ground that will enable the funding to come to Indian perspective. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Ashish. This is essentially, I think you talked about something very interesting, that it's not just R&D about the technical R&D, but we are talking about, for the vulnerable sections you talked about, we're talking probably also about R&D or on the business models, because the concept of cooling as a service is, can we really give them this so-called luxury commodity to this vulnerable section of the society in through just innovative arrangements where they actually don't have to pay this 40,000, 50,000 upfront cost. Still, they are able to access the service. So basically, innovation on those kind of business models is also equally important as compared to technical or technological level innovations and standards. So thank you for bringing that point. As I said initially, this is a round table. This is our best attempt for a round table. This is only one half of the round table. The other half is sitting there. Now, let me come to, we can see many experts sitting here, many veterans sitting in the other part of the round table. Your comments, your questions, or please first go ahead and then we'll come to you, sir. Please go ahead, Simran.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, this was very much informative, and there are a lot of technocrats and experts are available in this room. I have a question actually to everyone from since morning we are listening to many experts for technocrats, policies, standards and other so many things. Just a question, do we really need to promote clean energy or green energy? Because there is a difference. everyone is talking about low GWP refrigerant as a solution of refrigeration industry. Do really low GWP is a solution of this good environment or clean environment thing? Because if you will mix poison with poison, it will stay poison. That's what low GWP refrigerants are doing. Why not we just adopt to this CO2 natural one, 290 natural, because they have very strong applications. You could easily perform heating, you could easily perform cooling, and there are many other solutions which could be identified with this. It is standard. It has zeros. It is not banned in every part of the in any part of the world, and will not be banned in any part of the world. Let me give an example. Honeywell is one of the most well-renowned company, and in India, what they are doing is they are mixing two different synthetic refrigerants to create another refrigerant, and that is will stay synthetic. So, are we really going for clean or green technology? That's one question which came into my mind. Another thing is, if we already have a solution, as we all know that, why we are not implementing it directly? CO2, as my colleague said from the Danfoss, they were mentioning about one project which was handled by IIT Madras and NTNU. That is with the support of Norwegian agency, as the full funding was provided by these institutes. We have the solution. Why we are not promoting such type of technology around the globe, which could easily get us to the COP and other protocols? We could easily address those protocols. Many friends from industry, they mentioned about the sustainability. I believe we already have the solution, but we still worry about what would happen if we'll implement it directly.
Great, thank you. Thank you for your very interesting and passionate comment. I think this, Professor Agarwal, you want to comment, but also, I mean, this point was made that this experiment where we successfully showed CO2 application, is still, it somehow did not catch up in the market. I think this point
No,
was
I think
already
it's
made.
a journey. I mean, for example, Mr. Bambure touched that, you know, we are trying to build an ecosystem towards sustainability. And it's a journey actually, and everything has got a starting point and a finish line. So we are on a journey right now, and we need to come out of the hydrocarbons that we have been dealing with to a little bit better refrigerants. But when you go back 100 years plus, everything was natural refrigerants then. So we have come a long cycle back to natural refrigerants actually. But I think the cost of doing it is the challenge. You know, the real challenge is the cost of doing it. And I think we cannot look cooling in isolation. Remember, cooling is also energy, it's also water. And we are trying to fix cooling, but we are not trying to fix water. They coexist. You know, many of the water-cooled solutions are far more efficient than air-cooled solutions. So it's coexist. So there's a sector coupling between energy and water, cooling and heating. So we are trying to solve in isolation problems. That's why we need an ecosystem approach, even on an application level. And you also need an ecosystem approach on the entire value chain, actually. That's why I said it should be a social transformation that we need on this subject. It's not enough we just focus on one component or on one product, actually. And I also heard this morning about supplier base. Let me tell you, India has the world-class supplier base. 20 years back when we came to India, we never had thought that we need to bring our suppliers from where we were manufacturing. Today I can proudly tell you I have 118 suppliers that I've developed in the last 7 years who export out of India to rest of my factories worldwide. And they're all MSMEs. And here I think the bigger companies have a responsibility and not always look at the government for support. We also have equal responsibilities to build the capabilities of our MSMEs. I mean, we have given machines, we have given knowledge, we have taken our suppliers to abroad. That's how it works. It's a collaborative effort, actually. So you can always put one finger on the government, but another finger points back to you, actually. So I'm not taking you, Mr. Ajit. So
Thank you. Thank you for highlighting this. I think collaboration is extremely important, and I think all of us do understand that. And I think that's the, that's also one of the biggest agendas that we are pursuing. How can we be more collaborative in this larger ecosystem? Sir, you had a question, please. or comment?
I don't think his question was answered.
One more point I would like to
Huh. Please.
see.
Okay. Okay, sure.
You said about there are the
And then Professor
technology available, but it's not implementable. Okay, the technology is very clean and are green technologies are available, but it's not. No, I'm talking about technology which is green technology is available, not implemented. That is his point ultimately. Okay, so the point here is, as Mr. Ravindran said, that the cost of investment, the initial cost, it is the point, and also during the journey of the product, the safety parameters, which is to look at it. And it comes to again, as for ICAP, there is a biggest issue in the market is the after product delivered to the customer, how it managed throughout the life cycle. That is the biggest issue as in today, the issue of management of the product over the life cycle. If you see as for sustainability point of view, any product, the product management, assessment if you do, any product assessment, 70 to 80% of energy CO2 emissions happens during the usage. Only 30% only contribute manufacturing product, whatever components used. 70% is consumed at a actual usage. That is the actual power consumption, right? So during that time, if the product is not managed well, then there is a big loss. Already if you see the established already industry, whatever stock is there in a room AC or any other product, because of maintained properly, not maintained properly, the energy consumption is almost 50% higher. This is one point. Another point, here also again policy intervention is required. Just now I talking about one of the product which is available in the market, that is absorption chillers, which consumes much lesser than a vapor compression cycle, right? And which also the absorption system can also run with the solar, with heat, waste heat, etc. But the systems are not aware, or the initial cost is bit higher than the existing system, so that is not being implemented. Now we see the other countries how do it. I just take an example. In Bangladesh, the government made a policy. Any factory or any unit, which consumes 500 kilowatts of power on a year, where on a month or whatever, on a month I think, if it is more than that, they should install absorption chiller in that particular. For example, this is a hotel. There are a lot of heat is being rejected to the environment. They can use that heat with that absorption chiller, they can able to do it. So that is mandated over there. There is a linkage. So in any new technologies coming in, there is a issue of initial investment and overall, the suitability to that particular end user. That is the current issue. That kind of issue can be resolved through a policy intervention as well as the awareness, the total life cycle cost analysis. When I talk with LCC, the total life cycle cost, still very few.
So could you conclude?
It is limited to some of the experts only. It is not exactly to the end user. So these two things need to be more evolved, and so that you can able to implement the new technologies faster. Thank you.
Thank you. Professor Agrawal, you wanted to respond?
Actually, his question was, if I could understand about the green technology and the direct use of like natural fluids. That was you meant. Basically, if we see the cooling demand, by and large, is served by the compression system, vapor compression system. Almost 85% is served by that. And there are variety of applications. There are certain applications, as I mentioned earlier, also like small domestic refrigerators, air conditioners, but there are large systems or there are different applications, and which have actually, if you see, all of us are maybe related with the refrigeration, air conditioning, but 3 levels of pressure serving. Low pressure, that means the centrifugal chillers, the medium temperature, there are variety of equipments including mobile air conditioners, the commercial refrigeration equipment, process chillers, even screw chillers like 134A where it is used. And then the high pressure. So the high pressure systems, again like 22 or 32 or 410. So now actually you have to look for each. It's easy to say that you directly move from one to the direct last one, which is the best. You may say butter, you may say the ammonia, you can say the CO2, you can say the, so like that. But again, what will be the cost of change of equipment? What will be the design changes? What will be the end product? Right? All those aspects. So in this changeovers from 1 to 3 and this, I always, feel happy to mention that the CFC 12 is GWP was 10,900. And when we shifted to 134A, it was 1430. Now, how much drastic change which brought in? So it's not that one poison to another poison. It's not, please. Less is a lesser. So the process goes, the technology development or the R&D, what we are talking about, is not actually today you envisage and you reach to the last point. It's a intermediate steps. You move ahead in that direction. So this is what actually I want to convey, that it's true that we want to go to the best possible technology, green technology, and today's green and sustainable technology. All R&D is focused towards that. All institutions are working, industry is working.
Great, thank you.
All the government policies are also in that direction. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Now, please, we'll come back to you with another question. So we'll just come back to you. Sorry, just give another gentleman a chance. We can also discuss. Yeah, please, sir, please go ahead.
Yes, sir. We are talking about the efficiency of energy, and unfortunately, whenever in India, although we have already made a mandatory not to have a temperature less than 24, just like Japan, and our body is comfortable at 25 to 37. If you go outside, it may be 40 plus, and it's a very unhealthy also. So why not to make it is a implemented mandatory to fix manufacturing of all this air conditioning not less than 24. Most of the time it is 16 degree or less than that, and everybody is wearing jackets and all this. So if you go by this agriculture, in Haryana, now there is a great demand for agriculture electricity, and this is not available for industrial purpose also. So we are wasting this energy that can be utilized in other parts also. Thank you.
Rajan?
I can give you a different, if you do it right now, they will pounce on the government and say they're doing it because it's power shortage. So the timing is also important to do that.
I think Rajan has done some recent research on this topic.
So it's not for us to remain comfortable physiologically, we actually need 27 and 27 and a half. But anyway, we want to feel powerful, and hence we need cooling, otherwise we just need comfort. And it's a psychological angle to it, that everybody wants cooling because they want to feel powerful. Otherwise, comfort is the one what all of us needs to seek. Anyway, National Building Code does have a standard which is based on something called adaptive thermal comfort. That means based on the outdoor temperature, your indoor temperature sensation varies. It's a scientific study, either for commercial or either for residential building. And probably it's a matter of enforcement. It's not that it's not there in a National Building Code, it is there, and the government does prescribe that. It is we who have to start practicing that.
But there's a lot of options available in the future, because when you get a lot more digital, if anybody wants to change the temperature to 24, you charge them an extra price on energy. If you can do that through technology, you can solve the problem actually. I understand, but implementing anything on ground in India is very challenging, right? You have the state governments, the central governments, even building codes is a big story which I can tell you of a cup of tea actually.
I will like to put it this way.
Actually, I'll mention. It has taken person like me 30 years to have this voluntary or the default temperature control 24 degrees Celsius. 30 years I have spent. A conference of bigger room like this, I have run the psychrometer and examined, gave the questionnaire, to the individual, how are you feeling about it? With all that, still things didn't work. Policies, there are policy issues, there are the industrial issues, there are many, many things. And of course, what Raval has said, this well noticed that yes, even X-ray comfort chart you see, you will come to the same conclusion. But only it's our own adaptability. And when we say here, the heat strokes outside, whatever we are getting cool, and here, I would not like to wear this jacket, but I know what will be the temperature here.
Thank you.
So, and he has rightly said it is 27 degrees Celsius is the healthiest temperature.
Great.
Right?
Thank
At
you.
that point, so please, this has to come, not through the government, regulatory bodies. It has to come through the consensus development, by the awareness to the people that they save the electricity bill, they save their health, and they produce less heat outside.
Great. Thank you, Professor Agarwal. Thank you,
that's
sir.
what it
So this is a very controversial question. We like controversial questions. No doubt, no problem with that.
I would like to add
Yeah,
some
please, sir.
controversy. What is the responsibility of the end consumer also? There is a provision to run at 29 degrees centigrade also. Why not run? No, 24 is a default. Okay. So, and consumers do know that if we keep it at a higher temperature, they have got less energy bill. Okay. So, let us not put everything on this thing. Let the consumers also play a role in saving his own electricity bill and contributing to the nation.
But how many people, just a quick, how many people actually run their ACs beyond 27 degrees in this room? Like 27, 28 of you. Yeah. That's how we need to do. I think that's how we need to do. So, please, sir.
So,
this question has generated a lot of excitement in the
Actually,
room.
what Professor Agarwal has said, 24 degree, we should see what is the ambient temperature in the peak summer in India. So ambient today must be 45, 46 degrees. So you should actually maintain minimum 27 degrees centigrade. And the best part possible is the hybrid solution these days, which many of the big corporates are adopting. They are keeping the temperature at 27 degree, also running the fans. And the fans also have to run on the BLDC motors. So you save energy and you possibly get the best of the temperature comfort over here. I think by default, we should make it 26 or 27 degrees centigrade. I also represent ISHRE, and ISHRE has taken a task of 1 degree up. Set the temperature 1 degree up. If you are keeping the temperature 24, at least set at 25 degree. If you are keeping it 26 degree, set it at 27 degree. And I tell you, it gives the best of the comfort to you. Even by the ISHRE stand, the psychrometric comfort zone, you can have a high temperature, low humidity. A low temperature, high humidity. With Indian content, the high temperature with low humidity gives you the best of the comfort.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
And
sir.
just one question which I wanted to ask, that the standards should be indigenized soon. Now we have a very massive product range of VRF systems in the country, but we still have the capacities at 35 degrees centigrade. Why? Why should not be at 45 degrees centigrade temperatures? And we still define the capacity in BHPs. While the all air conditioning product, the capacities are defined in tons. So the time has come that we have to adopt these things as per the Indian standards. And ISHRE has already developed these standards, but it's yet to be adopted by the BIS. So I think this is the role which BIS has to play more proactively to the industry benefit.
So not to put you on spot, Ms. Kindo, not to put you on spot, but if you want to, do you want to respond to that? And Mr. Mahmood, do you want to?
So I will respond first, and then Kindo can add to that. Let us understand what standards are. So first of all, standards are for comparing. Okay, standards anywhere and everywhere we try to compare, and as of today, the standardized testing of air conditioning equipment across the world, except for the HAT countries, which is high ambient temperature countries, is 35. US has got 35 degrees centigrade, though they have got a temperature in Texas and other places very high. So when you want to compare, you should have a comparable. We should not look only for India now. We should look also for outside because we're planning to export. And that is where a comparison will happen. Of course, in the equipment, which is, I would like to say some of the equipments which you're speaking of, that is informed sale. What I mean to be informed sale is that the customer is knowledgeable about the temperatures, the performance, technically competent to analyze it. And of course, he will ask for the curves, he will ask for many other things. But frankly, if India wants to export these products in a big way, we should be aligned with what are there outside India. Why not 52? If some country has got 50 as a temperature, why not 28, where some country has got 28? I'm not talking of high ambient, but low ambient countries also, they tested at 35. So that is my answer to it.
But sir,
Thank you.
when we are having chillers are not defined at 35 degrees centigrade. Chillers, the chilled water units, we are defined at 45 degrees centigrade. So why VRF not? So there has to be parity, and I think this time has come that we have to adopt to Indian conditions.
Agarwal sir, let me say.
I'm wondering if I should intervene as a moderator.
All standards are made, by BIS, developed by BIS, published by BIS, but all with the close cooperation with the industry, with the associations, with the academic institutions. I think they had to act there. They had to share. And what actually Khushbu said about the data, really the data is with them. If those members do not have that data, then what for they are there? I'm very frank to say.
Absolutely.
The data is with the industry, data with the academic institutions, data with the testing labs, and all are represented. It's a very huge body. I have chaired for 6 years, long back, but I see there's a good wealth of knowledge, good wealth of data, information. So I think there we need to. In such meetings, it happens, blame the government, blame the academy, blame this.
Sorry, I have to
it's not the controversy.
We have got only 5
it's not
minutes
a controversy.
left. Miss Kindo first, and then, sorry, Brother Agrawal, we have got just 5 minutes left, so we just want to continue.
Nothing, sir. I'm very thankful to Professor Agrawal. He is very rightly said. Please. And as pointed out by Mr. Manjunath also, standard development is actually a cooperative collaboration between various organizations, institutions, academia, government bodies, and so on. So I won't go back to the history, why it took so long, but of course the committee has now finally come to a consensus, agreed upon the required technical, after receiving the technical data, come to a consensus, and finally the document is under development. So it will be available soon.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Yeah, please go ahead, Himanshu, with your question.
Ms. Marit wants to.
Can I have one more question, please?
Thank you. And I'm going to start by saying that the recommendations in Norway during winter is to turn your indoor temperature down 1 degree. And the recommendation is 22 as your maximum, but then you are, of course, heating. And then, of course, we have the same thing. It's cold outside and warm inside. And a surprising amount of people have it warmer. So the comfort argument can win over the financial one. But I just wanted to reflect on Professor Agrawal's comments about the need for data. I mean, this is so important, both for the use of, but also of the amount of gases, the efficiency, the effect. This is why it's so important to have the peer-reviewed articles out in the public domain. I was in a different discussion earlier this week where they made the very important point that is actually when you get it into the global reviews, which is also very important to help move our joint knowledge forward. And I think that this discussion illustrated very well why it's necessary for the industry in India to think of many different contexts and many different possibilities. So. And this then comes back to why international collaboration is so important and why this is an important part of our engagement with India. And we look forward to continuing it. And we have practical applied pilots in joint with industry, and that is also to help secure the engagement and the share of information. So thank you.
Thank you so much. One question and then we'll come back to you, sir. There was a question from the floor here. Mr. Mehra? Yeah.
No, mine is not really a question, but it's a task. We have academia, we have industry captains here. You know, we have been talking about the need for HFC phase out. And we have been talking about HFOs being very expensive. Why shouldn't India come out with a refrigerant of its own? Just as we had the global cooling prize, we can have a national refrigerant prize. Put 1 crore for that. Put the IITs to task. Put the CSIR institutes to task. Let them come out with a product. Let India be exporting that particular refrigerant to the global community.
Thank you, Mr. Mehra, for your comment. Yeah, Satish, please go ahead.
So I just, because the topic is sustainable cooling transition, so I'm going to bring the discussion back to thermal comfort a little bit, because I know there is a lot of refrigerant discussion happening, which is very important. But I don't know how many people have read this book, Ministry of the Future, by Kim Stanley Robinson. And the book starts with a very chilling description. It's like a fiction book, but it describes of a heat wave happening in Lucknow. And the heat wave is so strong, and it continues for like 36 hours, and basically everybody gets killed in that heat wave. So I'm saying that while we are working on refrigerants and air conditioners and others, I think this heat wave is telling us and pointing us to a much larger problem, which I don't think we are thinking about right now. And it could be a national disaster risk management thing. It could be like, how do you build your resilient infrastructure? And that is the reason why we keep coming back, design your building well. I think if you don't design your building well, A, the poor and the most vulnerable people who don't have access to air conditioning are going to really feel the heat of this thing. And B, I think that is your first kind of line of defense against, I think, absorbing this heat. This is not going to be a pandemic. This is going on this kind of a curve. So every year, I think we are going to feel, I think this. So I just rest. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Satish. Thank you.
30 seconds only. Just because now what we talked about is the collaboration between the academia and the manufacturers or the industry. Similarly, we talked about this when it comes to standards, the collaboration that we have amongst all the stakeholders. In fact, the technology collaboration also has to be looked at to provide the right solution. What I mean is maybe use of the artificial intelligence and also the machine learning for delivering, so that the machines can diagnose on their own, tell when it needs to be serviced, and also meets the comfort requirement of the user. So I think that's going to be one way which we can look at now as an immediate solution for this.
Great, thank you. Rajan, do you want to come in? Okay. Professor Agarwal, we just want to close 30 seconds to you, please. Please.
Yeah. What I wanted to say, I think Satish has said already, very rightly, what actually the comfort for all. That is what actually the message should be, irrespective whatever whether it's a refrigerant-based technologies or is a non-refrigerant-based technologies like fan he has mentioned. That's a must. Just I wanted to say, I requested 1 minute. Actually, for the sustainability point of view of cooling, there are 4 pillars. One is reduce cooling requirement, which needs, as rightly said, the building design. Somehow you reduce the cooling load from today itself. That is what it is. And this can be reduced by building envelope designs, by various building materials, by temperature control, whether we go to 26 or 25 or 27, whatever it is. Because each degree reduces a certain cooling load, improves the energy efficiency by 3%. So that's actually the potential in it. The secondly, the equipment efficiency, as all standard making efforts are towards that. The third most important is responsive use of cooling. Responsive use of cooling. Where what cooling temperatures, where you need cooling, you do it. Now actually we are talking more on buildings, but if I take it little further on to the mobile air conditioner, the moment you sit in the car, you need 20 degrees Celsius. From where it is coming? It is coming from the fuel energy. You are consuming more and more fuel. So the responsive use where whatever temperature, that means if you need it, you do it. But so the responsive use of the building space as well as the cooling, temperatures, all this. Then fourth one comes is the servicing, which is very, very important, because all that refrigerant which goes during servicing, because actually ultimately it leaks out. That's where the energy efficiency goes down. So the servicing is very, very important, and that should be taken up. So these four pillars which give the sustainability in the cooling.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Agarwal, for reminding us about the four most important pillars. This did not feel like a post-lunch session at all. So thank you so much for staying with us. Also, we had a tough job in the beginning, me and Himanshu, to ensure that it just doesn't become a panel discussion. So I also really thank not just people sitting on the left side of the round table, but also people sitting on the right side of the round table for all your engagement with this vibrant and very interesting debate. Thank you so much for joining us. Before I welcome Shikha for the vote of thanks, we'll just have some gifts for the people sitting on the dais. Thank you.